She still believed she could fix everything, but he had already realized there was no way back. While she was busy playing her game, he was changing the very foundation of their relationship. The pain that was meant for him alone, she now felt it herself in every indifferent glance, in every silent departure. Once, it seemed that love could endure any trial. But sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't loud arguments or betrayal. The most terrifying thing is the icy silence of someone who has stopped being afraid of losing you. Greetings, my dear viewer. Please, tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis? Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. Marcus Jensen had always prided himself on knowing Selena better than anyone else. Their 5-year marriage was built on shared moments of joy, endured hardships, and mutual aspirations for the future. He could still picture the moment he proposed, the way her face lit up with pure, unguarded happiness. At the time, it felt like they had life neatly mapped out. But everything shifted one quiet evening. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the muted noise of the television filling the silence between them. Without any preamble, Selena spoke in a tone so casual it could have been mistaken for a comment on the weather. "I'm having dinner with a colleague on Saturday," she said. Marcus blinked slowly, instinctively waiting for her to explain, some added detail that would make the remark less jarring. Instead, Selena merely reached for another piece of bread, calmly buttering it and eating as though she hadn't dropped a grenade in the middle of their routine. Marcus stayed still, trying to make sense of it. Perhaps he had misunderstood. Perhaps it was a poorly timed joke, but the way she kept her eyes averted, carefully avoiding his gaze, made a knot tighten in his stomach. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice unnervingly calm. At last, Selena glanced up. For the first time, Marcus caught something in her expression that unsettled him, a calculated steadiness, as if she had prepared herself for this moment. "It's just dinner," she replied lightly, as if it were the most ordinary thing. "It doesn't mean anything. I love you. This won't change our marriage." Marcus met her gaze, searching for any crack in the composure she wore like armor. But Selena held firm, radiating a disconcerting serenity, as though certain she was in the right. His fork remained untouched by his plate. The thought of food now seemed absurd. Though his chest tightened, he betrayed no outward sign of the turmoil inside. He would not give her that satisfaction. Perhaps she was counting on a confrontation, a burst of anger, a barrage of accusations, ultimatums hurled in a fit of rage. But Marcus had mastered the art of restraint. If nothing else, he knew how to keep his emotions hidden. Inhaling deeply, he released a slow, measured breath. If she intended this as some sort of test, he wasn't about to fail. To her surprise, a faint smile flickered across his face, so subtle it barely registered. "I see," he said, lifting his glass and taking a slow sip of water. He didn't miss it, the barely noticeable pause in her breathing, small but unmistakable. Selena wasn't after his permission. She wanted a reaction. The silence between them stretched, thick and immovable. Selena lowered her gaze back to her plate, perhaps to conceal her discomfort, but Marcus continued watching her with steady, unblinking patience. "Well," he said after a beat, his tone almost lighthearted, "maybe I should have dinner with someone too, just to see how it feels." That hit its mark. Selena's head snapped up, and for the first time the polished mask slipped. Uncertainty flashed in her eyes. Marcus spotted the subtle tremble in her hand as she tightened her grip on her fork, and he allowed himself a rare moment of grim satisfaction. She blinked several times, clearly trying to process his words. She hadn't expected this. She was prepared for outrage, not indifference. "You've met someone?" she asked, striving for a tone of casual interest. Still smiling faintly, Marcus gave a nonchalant shrug. "There's a woman at the gym I talk to sometimes. Maybe I'll ask her out." He watched as the color drained from Selena's face. The balance between them shifted in an instant, and Marcus knew he hadn't even begun to show his full hand. Silence settled over them again, thick and oppressive. Selina's confident exterior wavered, only slightly, but enough for Marcus to notice. Her fork hovered, forgotten, and her eyes widened with the struggle to process the unexpected turn. Marcus leaned back, appearing completely at ease, as though they were discussing something as mundane as grocery shopping. Beneath the surface, however, he felt a cold satisfaction. There was something chillingly gratifying in watching her experience the same uncertainty she had so easily handed to him. "I see," she murmured, attempting to gather herself. She looked down, pushing food around her plate, but Marcus noticed the slight shaking of her leg beneath the table, a tremor she couldn't quite control. He knew her too well to miss it. Why the sudden anxiety? If she truly believed there was no harm in going out with someone else, why was she so rattled by the thought of him doing the same? It dawned on him. She hadn't anticipated being challenged. The experiment she thought she was orchestrating was slipping through her fingers. "Is there an issue with that?" Marcus asked, his voice light, almost playful. Selina forced a tight, brittle laugh and shook her head. "Of course not. I just didn't think you'd actually do it." "Funny," he replied, folding his arms, "because I didn't think you would either." This time she didn't laugh. His words struck deeper than he intended, and the polished veneer she clung to began to crack. Quickly she tried to recover, lifting her chin and summoning a breezy tone. "So, who's this woman at the gym?" she asked, trying to sound indifferent. Marcus smiled inwardly. He had anticipated this line of questioning. What amused him most was how poorly she concealed her sudden, intense curiosity. "I don't see why it matters," he said, dabbing at his mouth with a napkin. "You said it doesn't change anything between us. If that's true, the details shouldn't concern you." Selina gave a short, hollow laugh, but tension was etched across her features, the tight set of her mouth, the rigidity in her jaw. "So," she pressed on, "is it serious?" "Are you really seeing that woman?" Marcus asked, his head slightly tilted as he studied Selina, as though trying to decipher her unspoken thoughts. "Weren't you the one who suggested we explore this together?" Selina opened her mouth, ready to respond, but no words came out. For the first time that evening, she was rendered speechless. The air between them, already heavy with unspoken tension, thickened until it felt almost suffocating. The confidence she had shown when she first set this plan in motion was slipping away right before her eyes. Marcus didn't need any further confirmation. He had seen enough. Clear evidence that Selina had never truly believed he would play by the rules she had proposed. More significantly, he recognized the dawning awareness in her, the sudden fear that she was about to lose something she had always considered hers by right. Without another word, he lifted his glass, finished the last of his water, and pushed his chair back from the table. "Good night, Selina," he said quietly. She remained seated, motionless, watching him leave the kitchen, her gaze distant and empty. In that moment, Marcus understood. The power dynamic between them hadn't just shifted, it had completely turned in his favor. In the days that followed, a silent, undeniable transformation took place. The house, once alive with familiar routines and casual conversation, now echoed with a tense, unnatural quiet that spoke louder than words. Marcus moved through his daily life as though unaffected by what had transpired. He left for work at the usual time, returned without delay, but carried himself with a calm assurance that hadn't been there before. And gradually, Selina began to realize the truth. At first, she convinced herself it was a facade, a tactic to provoke her into conceding. Yet, as time went on, it became clear. Marcus wasn't pretending. If anything, he became even more elusive. The first real jolt came on a Wednesday morning as she sipped her coffee. Passing through the hallway, she caught sight of Marcus standing in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt collar. It was a familiar ritual, But today, something had changed. He lingered longer, smoothed his hair with particular care, and checked his appearance with a newfound self-assurance. Then he glanced at his phone, a faint, knowing smile tugging at his lips. For the first time, Selena felt something stir in her chest, a flicker of fear, an emotion she had never before associated with Marcus, the fear of losing him. She tried to push it aside, but the image stayed with her throughout the day. Who was texting him? Had he truly found someone else? That evening, as they sat side by side watching television, she ventured a casual remark. "You seem happier lately." Marcus didn't even glance away from the screen. He merely allowed a small smile to appear. Shifting in her seat, she crossed her legs and added, feigning indifference, "And busier too." This time, Marcus turned his head, studying her intently, as if trying to unearth her true motives. "I guess I'm making better use of my time," he said evenly. The quiet conviction in his voice sent a chill through Selena that she couldn't suppress. Over the next few days, she found herself observing him more closely than ever before. His phone seemed to buzz more frequently. He began taking early morning runs. One evening, he returned home whistling a tune she didn't recognize, disappearing straight into the shower without a word. Then came Saturday, the same day Selena had arranged to meet her colleague for dinner, when, over breakfast, Marcus casually announced, "I have plans tonight." Selena froze, her coffee cup suspended mid-air. "Oh?" she said, striving for a tone of disinterest. "With that woman from the gym?" The question left her lips awkwardly, and she felt a sharp, invisible blow deep in her gut. She opened her mouth to say something else, to steer the conversation elsewhere, but found herself unable to form any words. She realized, with a sinking feeling, that she was cornered. Marcus hadn't just accepted the arrangement she proposed. He was excelling at it in ways she hadn't anticipated. For the first time, Selena doubted her ability to manage the situation she had so confidently engineered. That evening, Selena stayed home alone. Marcus left unhurriedly, wearing a shirt she didn't recognize, the scent of his cologne lingering faintly in the air long after he closed the door behind him. He offered no explanations, asked nothing about her own plans, and most devastatingly, showed not a hint of jealousy or regret. The realization struck Selena with a force she hadn't expected. She never met her colleague for dinner. Though he messaged her several times asking if they were still on, she ignored every one of them. How could she possibly focus on anyone else when Marcus had taken over her every thought? She wandered aimlessly through the house, telling herself none of it mattered, yet the gnawing anxiety only grew. She idly scrolled through apps on her phone, pretending to look for distractions, but deep down, she was waiting for a message from Marcus, for the sound of his return, for some indication that this was all a ruse. But the hours dragged on without mercy. No messages appeared, no footsteps echoed outside, no apologies, no last-minute explanations, only the relentless ticking of the clock and the heavy dread swelling in her chest. Selena ended up curled on the couch, the television playing a program she didn't notice, her eyes fixed on the front door, straining to catch any sound of movement. When Marcus finally came home, it was after 3 in the morning. He walked in quietly, with no trace of guilt or haste. He clearly hadn't expected to find her awake. That much was obvious. Yet there she was, sitting wide-eyed in the dim light, waiting for him. In that moment, something inside her broke apart. "How was it?" she asked, her voice barely stronger than a whisper, weaker than she had intended. Marcus shrugged off his coat, laying it carefully over the back of the chair, and fixed her with the same impassive, distant stare he had worn for days. "It was good." The simple, unembellished response cut through Selena with a coldness sharper than steel. Panic rose in her chest, constricting her breath. She longed to challenge him, demand an explanation, plead for him to say it was meaningless, a fleeting mistake. But the words lodged in her throat, refusing to surface. Marcus stood unmoved, unapologetic, as if her devastation was irrelevant. Perhaps that was the cruelest blow of all. Without another word, he turned and strode down the hallway toward their bedroom, leaving Selina rooted where she stood, her heart pounding violently, drowning out every thought. What had started as a game, a test to see if she could make him falter, to make him question himself, had unraveled beyond her control. Alone in the silence, she wished desperately that it was all some twisted prank. But Marcus was no longer playing. When dawn finally arrived, Selina woke gripped by a fear more raw and paralyzing than anything she had ever experienced. Fear that the man she thought she knew was gone. Fear that she had pushed him past a point of no return. Her body felt sluggish, burdened by the weight of the previous night's consequences. Slowly, she made her way to the kitchen. There sat Marcus, calmly sipping his coffee, absorbed in his phone, as though nothing in their world had shifted. He didn't even glance up when she entered. The sight of his indifference twisted inside her like a knife. "You got in late," she said, forcing a casual tone as though they were discussing the weather. Marcus didn't look up. "Yeah," he replied, his voice devoid of any emotion. The coldness in his tone was more chilling than any anger he could have shown. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him, studying his face for any sign that this was still part of their game, any flicker of the man she thought she knew. But there was nothing. The distance between them now was real and terrifying. "Marcus," she started, her voice unsteady, betraying her. She hated how fragile she sounded. What were they even doing anymore? Finally, he lifted his gaze and met hers, his eyes holding hers for an agonizing stretch of time, as if debating whether her question even deserved a response. "You tell me," he said finally, his voice even, slicing. "Wasn't this what you wanted?" Selina's stomach churned. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she murmured. Marcus gave a low laugh, not one of amusement, but a cold, clear sound that made it obvious he saw everything now without illusion. "And what did you expect?" he asked. "That I'd grovel? That I'd fall apart?" She tried to speak, but he cut her off before she could. "I've had a lot of time to think about it, Selina. About what it really means. That you suggested this. About what it says about us." Her chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. "Marcus, it was a mistake," she whispered. He didn't even flinch. "It was." The silence that followed was suffocating. Selina fought the urge to scream, to beg him to see that it had all been a reckless, thoughtless mistake. But deep down, she knew it was too late. Marcus had already made his decision. He rose from his seat, carried his empty mug to the sink, and washed it with a calm, methodical precision that felt foreign to her, like she was watching a stranger. When he turned back, his face was chillingly blank. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for finally showing me who you are." Without another glance, he left the kitchen. Selina sat frozen, dread tightening around her like a vice. Minutes passed before she found the strength to move. When she finally summoned the courage to walk to the bedroom, she stopped cold. On the nightstand was a neat stack of papers, divorce documents, already signed. In a single moment, her world collapsed. What she had thought was a harmless test, a way to provoke Marcus and watch him squirm, had instead laid waste to everything they had built. Leaning heavily against the doorframe, she watched in stunned silence as Marcus retrieved a suitcase from the closet. The rasp of the zipper was deafening in the heavy stillness. She understood then, without question, that it was over. Desperation propelled her forward, grasping for any remaining scrap of what they had. "Marcus, please," she whispered, forcing a trembling smile that was more a plea than an expression. "We've let this go too far. I forgive you for what happened." With her. Her hands shook as she tried to steady her voice. "Let's just forget it. If you forget what I said about going out with a coworker, I'll forget everything else. We can fix this." Marcus stood still, one hand gripping the suitcase handle. He turned and looked at her, and for the first time she saw it. Not a fear of losing her, but a fear of losing himself. A small, bitter laugh escaped him, devoid of humor. "I don't need your forgiveness, Selena," he said. "You've taught me something these past few days, that I'm worth more than this." Without hesitation, he snapped the suitcase shut, grabbed his keys, and walked away without looking back. The soft click of the front door closing echoed through the house, leaving Selena in a silence so complete it roared in her ears. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.